Okay, so to continue our discussion of analysis, we are going to have a look at a specific text um, and try to analyze it. So the text I've chosen, it's not really a text, it's a film, but we can think of it as a text because it has a script in it. But it's one of the recent Super Bowl commercials. So it's an advertisement, but it also tells a story. So we're going to have a look at it, and then we're going to try to answer a bunch of questions um, to give us to give us to draw out some analytic conclusions. So first we'll watch it, and then we'll discuss it.
I call it the wheel.
I don't think so.
What does it do? The rules.
Yeah, so does a bagel, okay? A bagel you can eat. One of the worst ideas I've ever heard.
Brother David, behold the fork.
I got 10 forks right here, baby! Am I right? My lord? What is it? A toilet, my lord. A toilet? You expect this court to do its business inside? We're not animals. We go outside like humans.
It's coffee. It's new.
It's awful.
You don't like it?
I'm all jittery and feel like I got a big job coming on.
Hancock, you sign first.
No king! Gentlemen, have you taken leave of your senses?
The people shall have the right to vote.
Even the stupid ones?
Yes.
Stupid people vote?
Yes.
Edison, can I be honest with you? It stinks. Does your wife know what's going on here?
She knows I go to work.
You're wasting your time, and it's sad. You might as well put the dishes in the shower.
Hey, Captain, what's cooking? We're putting a man on the moon. Are you out of your mind? I can't even get tuna without celery. Nobody's going to the moon, ever. Why not? It's too far. It's far. It's really far. It's far.
我々の未来はポータブルミュージックです。
バカか。バカか。わかるだろう。わかるだろう。わかるだろう。
出ていけ。
みんないるのか。怖いんだ。ああ、だから、また2回いつも言えるぞ。また2度も。バカだし。
Like I was saying, it's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never. Franklin! Hey, I left my cane in there. What? What do you mean? Hey, that's an expensive cane!
Okay, so now that we've watched it, we're going to try to analyze it. So I have this set of questions, which are for analyzing an argument, but really you could use it almost for anything. You could use it for analyzing something like a commercial, right? Because even a commercial is making a type of argument. So we'll be talking about that. So what's the first question that we have? The question, here I'll change the sizing a tad bit. The question is, what claim is the text making? What is the writer's main point? Is it stated as a thesis or only implied? Is it limited or qualified somehow? If not, should it have been? So this commercial is making a claim, right? So the main claim, it doesn't come at the beginning, but it comes at the very end. The main claim is that cryptocurrency is the next big thing, right? And it's being sponsored by a company that, an investment company that wants you to invest in cryptocurrency. So that's a claim that it's making, right? So any given advertisement is going to be making a claim like that. Your Cheerios commercial is going to be trying to sell you Cheerios, or your Nike commercial is trying to sell you Nikes, right? But the claim they're making is, you should buy Cheerios or you should buy Nikes. So this is making the claim you should buy cryptocurrency. So how is the claim being supported? What reasons does the writer provide for the claim, and what evidence is given for the reasons? What kind of evidence is it? Facts, statistics, examples, expert opinions, images? How convincing do you find the reasons and evidence? Is there enough evidence? Okay, so remember what the claim is. The claim is cryptocurrency is the next big thing. So how are they arguing for that? How are they supporting it? So really what they're doing is they're giving a set of historical examples of big things, big inventions in history. So they're giving the wheel, they're giving the toilet, the light bulb, big things that we all agree are big things that we still use to this day, right? And it's comparing crypto to that and saying, remember all these big things? Crypto is also a big thing like that. So you should buy it. You shouldn't be like Larry David, and just poo-poo every single invention, every single new thing you hear about. So that's how it's arguing for that. And so it's giving you Larry David as sort of a counter example to that, right? He's the guy who's trying to say you shouldn't buy this new thing. You shouldn't buy into it. It's all a scam. It's silly. The old ways are better. But every time he gets proven wrong, right? Because we know all of those were good things. Because we know our history and we use all those things every day. So that's sort of the argument it's setting up. It's setting up Larry David as that counterexample, and then it's giving all these reasons, all these big things that are comparable, right? So what appeals here are being used? What besides logic is being used? Does the writer appeal to the reader's emotions, try to establish common ground, demonstrate their credibility as trustworthy and knowledgeable? How successful are these? Okay, so I would say immediately that the appeal being used here is humor. Humor in the sense that it's Larry David's a comedian, right? And he's very funny. And every time you see him reject one of these, first, what's funny is just the way that he rejects it is always so self-confident, and he insults the person, he insults Edison, he insults the guy who made the wheel. So that's funny, but it's also funny how wrong he is and how cringy it is to see him make these self-confidently wrong claims. And in that way, it's sort of acting as humiliation a little bit. So it's almost humiliating. It's humiliating to see Larry David so wrong, and you don't want to be similarly wrong. It's horrifying that you also could be wrong. So it's appealing to you in that way. So that's an emotional appeal, right? They also call that pathos. Common ground, it is establishing common ground, I would say, because we all use these things. We all use forks, we use toilets, we use wheels, and light bulbs and such. So that's a lot of common ground. It's tapping into our shared knowledge of history, right? So it seems like it's using all those things pretty effectively. What counter arguments are acknowledged? If they are acknowledged, are they presented accurately and respectfully? Does the writer concede any value to them or try to refute them? How successfully does the writer deal with them? So this is interesting because we do see a consistent counter argument. Larry David is always arguing against the usefulness of the new thing, right? So he counter argues every single point: the wheel, the light bulb, all of them. And he's always proven wrong because we know our history. So because he's there, he sort of acts as that counter argument to all of the claims. Was the wheel a big thing? Larry David says no, but we know he's wrong. But we also have to ask, is that really a counter argument to the main claim of the paper? So the main claim of the advertisement. The main claim is that crypto is the next big thing. Now, this is a little bit more difficult to discern because we don't know the future. Crypto is so new that we can't say with a large amount of accuracy how important it will be. We know that in the last few years, it's been a very important speculative instrument, right? It's shot up in price and people have made a lot of money on shooting up like that. But we don't know, it has not been adopted by any countries as a primary form of currency. It has not really caught on in the way that we thought it might catch on, which is in the form of wallets, right? Bitcoin wallets. Some people have them. Bitcoin ATMs exist, but they're very rare. Also, there are serious downsides to some forms of cryptocurrency. It's not federally insured, for one. So if you lose it, you can't get it back, which is unlike, with your money in a bank, it is federally insured. So you could get it back. Another big problem with cryptocurrency right now is that because the price has been shooting up and falling down and shooting up and falling down, it's actually a really unstable investment. So as far as being a good investment, I mean, it's hard to say anything's a good investment, but in this case, we can say historically it's gone up, but we can also say recently it's actually gone down. It's hit a very hard downturn in recent months. Maybe it'll pick back up again, but we don't know. So does the advertisement acknowledge any of the stuff that I've just been saying? All those counter arguments that I just made? No, the advertisement doesn't acknowledge any of that stuff. In fact, the advertisement goes out of its way to avoid talking about cryptocurrency. It's talking about all these other historical examples. And even the way that it sets up its argument by comparison, right? That comparison can be questioned. So we can compare cryptocurrency to the wheel, right? We can compare it like that. But we also could compare it to other things. For example, what if it's not like the wheel at all? What if it's more like a floppy disk? So floppy disks were they were those square disks that people put in computers back in like the 90s and before then. But as soon as CDs were invented, floppy disks were obsolete and we no longer use them. And now we don't even use CDs anymore. we rarely ever use anything except MP3 downloads, right? Or similar such things. So it's notable that all of the examples that are used in the advertisement are really good examples, right? They're examples that have they've survived the test of time. The wheel has been around for thousands of years, but we're ignoring all those examples of good technology that has not survived the test of time. Good technology that has disappeared completely just within a decade, right? Is cryptocurrency like that? I mean, I don't know enough about computer engineering to be able to answer that. But what I do know is that they're going to try to sell it to you to make money, right? So it's important to ask: is cryptocurrency more like a floppy disk, or is it more like the wheel? Another thing that they don't even cover, you could ask, okay, there's another comparison to be made. The comparison to the tulip. So the tulip, some of you may know, was a speculative investment, right? People invested in tulips, and it became so popular to invest in tulips that it became a bubble. It was a famous bubble, the tulip bubble, which means that the price shot up really high, and then reached a certain point where tulips were so expensive, they were like the price of a house, and you couldn't even buy them anymore because they were too expensive for anybody to buy, including rich people, and then the price plummeted down again. So it was a bubble. It went up, but then it went back down. So you could ask, is the comparison to the wheel a good comparison, or is the comparison to a tulip a good comparison? So you can see how it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. The comparison cuts both ways, right? If we're going to compare it to some things, but not going to compare it to other things, then we really have to question that and give counterexamples, counter comparisons, right, of what might be wrong about that. Okay, so those are some of the counterexamples that they completely fail to address. So let's look at some of the last questions. So what outside sources or information does the writer cite? What kinds of sources are they, and how credible do they seem? Are they current and authoritative? How well do they support the argument? So in most advertisements, or in a lot of advertisements, you won't see sources cited. Maybe in some pharmacy, like pharmaceutical advertisements, they'll say something like, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend, and they'll cite the Association of Public Medicine, or they'll cite some source about that. So you can see that, but in this case, you don't have anything cited, right? We're not citing like the software and programming association, blah blah blah, in order to justify the claims. But we are doing something. We are citing what we're really citing here. We're citing communal knowledge, our communal knowledge of historical facts. So the wheel was invented way back when in Mesopotamia. We know that the light bulb was invented by Thomas Edison in America. We know that the Declaration of Independence, right, and the Constitution, those were founding documents that were signed in America in the early 1700s. When we watch this, all of those things are recognizable to us because they're public knowledge. And the argument works because it's citing these historical facts that we all are aware of. And we're so aware of them because of its public knowledge that it doesn't even have to explain them. It can just jump right into the joke. We see the pyramids being built. We know that we're in ancient times. We see the Declaration being signed. And we see funny wigs. And we know that we're in the Revolutionary War period of the early United States. So we know these things just because of common knowledge, and it doesn't have to cite them. So that's one of the rules of citation is you don't really have to cite something if people know it already. If it's public knowledge, then it's fair game. And you can see how that's used in this advertisement very well because I presume all of those images were recognizable to all of us who share our American cultural background, right? They're all recognizable because we all have that knowledge already, and they're specifically using common knowledge. So that's to very good effect, right? To the effect that we all know what they're talking about. Now, finally, do you detect any fallacies? Fallacies are arguments that involve faculty reasoning. Because they often seem plausible, they can be persuasive. It is important, therefore, that you question the legitimacy of such reasoning when you run across it. All right, so we talked about fallacies. And we also talked a little bit about what might be wrong with this advertisement when we talked about our counter arguments. But what fallacies do you see? So there's a few that I would say there's a few big ones, at least two big ones here, two fallacies. The first one is false comparison. So the entire argument rests on this comparison between cryptocurrency and important inventions of history. Now, we are assuming that that comparison is right. But, as I mentioned before, there are ways in which that comparison might not be a one-to-one comparison. It might be a bad comparison in a few ways. One way that it's a bad comparison is simply the fact that all of those are historical examples, and this is a brand new one. We really don't know what new technology will bring. Another reason it's a bad comparison is because, like the floppy disk, a lot of electronic technology goes obsolete very quickly. So it might be a bad comparison. It might be a bad comparison in that sense that we're not comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing apples to robot cyber oranges. And it's really, the comparison really doesn't hold for robot cyber oranges because they're a very different thing from regular oranges. So that's a reason why this comparison might not be a good one. What is another reason? So, or rather, what's another fallacy? So the other obvious fallacy that I see in this has to do again with what they're posing as the counter argument, which is Larry David. So Larry David is a walking, talking fallacy. What fallacy is he? He's a straw man. So what is a straw man? It's when you frame your opponent in a very, very ridiculous light, in a very weak light, right? That's what a straw man, you can just kick over a man that's made of straw. Larry David, the way he's presented, nobody would agree with him, right? Everybody knows those were good ideas. Nobody is arguing that the wheel was a bad idea. I've never met that person. If they exist, maybe you can show me them, but that is a very rare position to hold. So it's a straw man position. You're comparing people who are skeptical of crypto, you're comparing them with people who are skeptical of the wheel, or who were skeptical of the wheel at the time when the wheel was invented, right? People who are skeptical of the wheel now, they would be even more ridiculous. But people who were skeptical of the wheel back then, I mean, they would have been ridiculous, but they would have at least been understandable because it's something new, something that they wouldn't have been familiar with. They might not have seen the use of it. But it's obvious that Larry David's just wrong. Like, nobody's saying Larry David was the right person. So you're comparing the example of people who are anti-crypto, you're comparing them with this obviously wrong position. You're equating the two in a way that is it's not really fair to people who are skeptical of crypto, because I mean, there are reasons that we just talked about, that there are reasons to be skeptical of crypto, and maybe crypto will be the future, like the advertisement says, but they have not given a fair representation to the people who are skeptical of it. So those are some fallacies. Those are two obvious fallacies that are being employed to make the argument, right? But we can generally tend to overlook it because it's so funny that that we sort of suspend our logical reasoning and end up falling for the gag. But when we really analyze it, right, like we've been doing, we can sort of break down and have a different interpretation of this advertisement. So they are using fallacies, and they are trying to get you to buy crypto with this argument, but without giving you many counter examples of why maybe you shouldn't believe the argument. All right, so that's been an analysis of a football commercial. So I encourage you to try using these same sets of questions on just the next piece of media that you consume. So maybe you're about to watch a TV show. Maybe you're about to talk to your parents. Maybe you're about to go hang out with your friends, or maybe you are watching this sports right now and seeing another commercial during the halftime. Maybe you are seeing, maybe you're reading your textbook. But no matter what you're reading, you can ask these same questions of the thing that you're reading, right? And analyze it and try to come up with some new interpretations of what they're saying.